Welcome to the American Dream in the Eyes of Immigrants podcast. I am your host, Heidy De La Cruz, and I am on the mission to change the narrative of immigration, one immigrant story at a time. Hey, it's Heidi, your host, and I am here to give a few announcements. So first, I want to say happy holidays. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for supporting, and I just hope that you and your family have a great holiday season this 2024. And new announcement is that the podcast starting for 2025 will be weekly. So you can find episodes on a weekly basis. We're still going to keep the Tuesday schedule. So now you will find new episodes every Tuesday for 2025. And because I am switching to a weekly schedule, I am actually looking for sponsors. And the reason that I'm looking for sponsors is to be able to add someone else to my team. So I don't know if you know, but I run this podcast by myself. So I look for guests, I schedule them, record it, edit, and then we upload. I said we, but it's really me. Upload and just everything that goes on behind the scenes with the podcast, I do it on my own. And so I am looking to be able to add someone to the team to help me. So this is where the sponsors comes in. So I have advertisement packages available if you're interested in sponsoring, and we can talk in more details. You just need to send me an email at Heidi@HeidiDelacruz.com, and we can talk more details about that. So yes, sponsors for 2025 to be able to expand the podcast and add someone to my team. So if you are interested in advertising your business, or you're interested in just, helping the mission of the podcast to amplify immigrant voices and their stories, then I would be more than happy to speak to you in regards to becoming a sponsor for the podcast next year. Thank you again so much for being here. Thank you so much for your support. I greatly, greatly appreciate it. The podcast is growing, and so that's why I need help, because I still am releasing a lot of stories. People are very, very interested in sharing their immigration story, and I'm so thankful and grateful for that. And I'm so grateful for everything that God is doing. And now this announcement has gone longer than it should. So once again, thank you so much for being here. If you're interested in being a sponsor, let me know, and enjoy the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the American Dream in the Eyes of Immigrants podcast. I am your host, Heidy De La Cruz, and today I have a very special guest. I have Dr. Griselda Martinez. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you so much for being willing to share your immigrant story. And if you could please introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, and how was your childhood growing up in Mexico?
Awesome. Okay. Well, Haiti, thank you so much again for having me to share this story. And, you know, telling our immigrant story is, we seldom think about it once we are here because we have to make it work, right? So it is going to be a very interesting conversation. So thank you for allowing me to share my story here with you. My name is Griselda Martinez, as you said, and I have a couple of things going on for my business. I started my own business almost 3 years ago. Time flies when you're having fun. One of the components to that is economic development consulting, which is an extension to what I did in my career for the last 15 years. And that was the easy transition for me to start my own business. However, in the last year and a half, I have really evolved into things that I never knew or thought about doing. And one of them is business coaching for aspiring women, entrepreneurs who are just like me, just before I took the plunge. And so mid-career professionals, experts in their fields, and they're ready to start a business, whether as a full-time job, as a side gig, but they know that they have a business within them. So that's another thing that I do. And then I'm also a peer podcaster. I have my own podcast, is Unexpectedly Successful. And the reason how I launched, the reasons of us launching podcasts are so powerful. When I started my own business, I realized that even though I had a very strong network of professionals, they reflected the career that I had and not necessarily the network of people that I needed to make my business successful. And so the mission of my podcast is to bring success stories of other women already ahead of the game, from aspiring entrepreneurs sharing their stories and becoming role models and sharing their know-hows, lessons learned, and the raw and genuine stories of what having a business means for them as women. So yeah, that's what I do.
Awesome. And so you came from Mexico. So give us a little background story of growing up in Mexico.
Yeah, so I grew up in Mexico. I am number four to the five mom and dad children, and then I have a little sister. She's no longer little. She turned 28. She's my dad's daughter, but she grew up with us as part of my young adulthood, I should say. And she's 16 years old, younger than me. So it was a really interesting part of the equation as I was in my adolescent years. But anyway, so I grew up in northern part of Mexico, the state of Chihuahua, in a small town, well, 100,000 people, called Parral, Chihuahua, mining little town. And I lived there until I was 7, when my mom and my siblings moved to Chihuahua City, which is a much bigger city, about 800,000 people. And we lived there for about 10 years. And it was fun. My younger brother to me, 2.5 years apart, 9 months. We had a wonderful childhood. We used to do anything and everything. My dad and my mom were not, they were strict on certain things, but they definitely gave us freedom to do things. As a little fun, like really fun memory I have is my brother and I, in Parral, as a little town, the streets were not heavy traffic. So we were able to learn how to drive when we were like 11 and like 8. And my younger brother, he could barely get to the clutch and the accelerator at the same time, right? And so you could picture these two little kids trying to learn how to drive. And there's this street really steep, and we were driving shift stick, right? And so we would go to the bottom of this street and we would just like challenge ourselves to learn how to drive. And I share this because, like, in the world we live now, there's no way people would let their kids do that, right? But that was the level of freedom that we enjoy as kids. And so wonderful childhood, lots of like fun memories of us. When we lived in Parral, my mom would do, it was 5 of us, so lots of hungry mouths there. And my mom would pack a big bag of just food, and we would take the train that would go from my hometown to a little mining town, which was like, I don't know, an hour, 2 hours of train ride. And then we would do like a little picnic and then come back home, and that was our outing. And so really unique things that are so far from what we even consider as options right now.
Yeah.
And it's not that it had some, I mean, I'm not that old yet, but so this was what, late 80s. And so the world has changed drastically in the last 40 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a lovely experience, being born and raised in Mexico with a lot of freedom, a lot of opportunity to be outside. Just when some of our parents say, we would be out of the house at early in the morning, and we would be back before dark. That was pretty much how I grew up.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you know what events led your family to decide to move to the United States?
So Haiti, I moved to the US by myself.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So I'm to this day, I'm the only one from my immediate family who lives in the US. I was so interesting pieces of events. So when I was 16, my mother passed away. And
So
that was a
sorry.
drastic change in the family
Yeah.
future and the family dynamics and opportunities, because the caregiver, the person who was going to be overseeing our adult life, right? She was no longer there. So that really shifted the trajectory of what was to be done with us as adults. And my dad, who was concerned and really, I don't think my dad really knew how to handle the situation.
Yeah.
He did what he could, and he invited me to go as an exchange student from Mexico into the US. And it was a cultural exchange student. And so after some consideration, and I've said this before, he said, I'm concerned about your future, and I want you to expand your horizons. And
Mm.
so he funded this program for me and my younger brother. Actually, he was much younger, and we were separate ways. I went to Louisiana, to the Cajun land, and my younger brother went to Oregon. And unfortunately for my brother, it didn't work out so well.
Mm.
For me, I became part of a wonderful family. Interestingly enough, the youngest of the four daughters to that family had gotten married the year before. So I came to an empty nester family, and I became the baby again. And so I enjoyed being the baby twice in my upbringing. And it was really, really fun. So after a year of being there, by the way, I didn't speak Spanish. I mean, didn't speak English at all. And
Mhm.
so the entire family was like a team effort to help me learn English and to just show me the things that people did in the US. I mean, my adoptive mother, I call her Mother Dearest. Up to this date, we're still family. I'm actually planning to go visit soon. Um,
Aw.
but she, like, for instance, I remember for I was there September, so Thanksgiving was a thing, and so they did everything, and they would explain me what was going on. We took a family trip not too long after I got there, and I got to enjoy Papa, which is the dad to the family, more than the daughters did. We got to ride roller coasters and get wet and all these really fun things. For my birthday, which is January, they had a whole party for me. I was like the center of attention, and
Oh.
everybody was loving and caring and really committed to helping me have the best experience ever. And so every season of the year, she makes sure that I had the best experience. For Valentine's Day, for Easter, it was so cool waking up on Sunday morning on Easter and having a huge, I'm talking a huge basket filled with chocolate, which is like, what is this? I mean, I was clueless, that, right? And so the Easter Bunny had delivered a whole basket of chocolate, and it was so much fun. And actually, another fun thing, she had included a pink duck instead of a rabbit, and that pink duck went with me places until in a move, I lost it, and I still miss that pink duck. It was the best companion ever. But for Fourth of July, for Sadie Hawkins, she even got me a date because I didn't know anybody, right? So a friend, the son to one of her friends, they made the arrangements. She would take us to dinner to have the pictures taken, all of these things. And so talk about, she did a wonderful job making sure that I had the experience of living in the US as a teenager. At the end of the year, I went back to my hometown, and and then I was supposed to start college after that, and a lot of little tweaks here and there. And I ended up moving back to my hometown after having lived in Chihuahua City for almost 10 years. And then I was there for 2.5 years when I decided to transfer schools. And then I jumped to the border town, which is Juarez, and I was there for 6 months. And then I jumped to the other side of the border in El Paso, Texas, and I started. I finished my bachelor's at UT El Paso, then stayed for my master's, then stayed the year after under the OPT program. So I stayed the years in between school. And then in 2000 and up until that point, I don't think I was fully conscious of me pursuing to live in the US. Like I was just doing school, doing what I needed to do, working, all of those things. And then 2008 and 2009 was the Great Recession. And my working permit under the OPT was ending. And there were some changes in the supervisory team above me, and the new person, there was no way that she was going to support spending money for a work visa. And so, and then also I was working for the El Paso Police Department, and there was a lot of money being sent to the borders to continue to militarize that. And it was just a really big conflict of who I was as a professional and at the person level. And so I went back home. Well, actually, it was like 6 months of going back home, quote unquote, because I stayed with some friends in El Paso. I closed my apartment. It was a very sad moment of me closing my apartment in El Paso. And I was really not sure what I was going to do. And then an opportunity to do my doctoral degree in Las Cruces, New Mexico, at New Mexico State University opened up. And that's how I came to the US. And I think that was the first time that I actually said, I was fully conscious of the decision I was making. And I said, I'm gonna make the best out of this opportunity in terms of my personal and professional growth. And I gave it all. I think up until that point, I was doing okay. I'm blessed to be a hard worker, but I don't think I was fully embracing being that professional or the person that I was called to be until that point. So that was 2010 when I came to Las Cruces, New Mexico, and 14 years later, I'm still here.
So you're still in New Mexico?
I still in New Mexico. 5 years ago, I got married. Okay, so up to that point, I have been in student visas, OPTs, work visas, TN, with the arrangement between Mexico and the US. I've been in tourist visa, expired tourist visas, no visa. I mean, it's been yeah. And so anyway, I got married in 2000 and what year? 2019. And that was when I transitioned as a permanent resident. But even with my education, that was not an opportunity for me. And so it was really interesting to be on all kinds of non-immigrant statuses up until that year, which was 2001 was when I first came to the US as a young adult to study. Almost 20 years later, I became a permanent resident. So really, anyway, for all the immigrants, I'm sure they know the frustration, the moments of scariness, like, what am I gonna do? My visa is not coming in. Anyway, so yeah.
So talk to us. Okay, before I ask about cultural shocks, so your family is still in Mexico. You said you're the only one, here. And how often do you visit?
So I am blessed to live nearby where I can just drive there. And so it's about 8 hours, depending on traffic. But I can leave one morning and get there in the afternoon. And so I made a commitment to stay connected to my culture and to definitely stay connected to my family. So I'm the only one over here, so it's much easier to bring one person than to bring the whole family. So I try to go at least once per quarter. So sometimes it's less often. Sometimes people come and visit, which is a bonus for me. And actually last Christmas was the first time that my family was at my home for Christmas. So that was
Oh, that's beautiful.
that was a beautiful Christmas. And it was like, wow, having, not everybody was able to make it to, my two brothers weren't able to be here and their families, but I had my father, my three sisters, and we had a blast. And it was fun to just welcome them for a holiday as the host, right? Which is
Yeah.
different than being the person moving to get there most often. So yeah, my whole family is still there, and yeah, it's even though sometimes it gets hard with the busy schedules and stuff,
Yeah.
I definitely made a commitment to remain connected to where I came from.
That's good. That is really good. And I love that you have that, that you're able to go. It's an 8 hour drive, because unfortunately, some immigrants, they have to wait like 10 plus years to be able to visit and then
Yes,
save up money to buy the
yes,
flight and be able to visit back home. So I'm really glad that you have that connection to your roots and you're able to stay connected and that your family was able to spend Christmas with you. That's so
yeah.
beautiful. Talk to us about the first culture shock you experienced or the first culture shock that you remember experiencing that was
Like, wow, in the
yeah,
US.
yeah.
Okay. So I remember it was a summer. My dad took us, all of my siblings. My little sister wasn't born yet. So it was the five of us. He took us to, um, well, the destination was Denver, but we drove
Mhm.
from my hometown there. And I remember clearly being outside of a McDonald's and seeing all these beautiful motorcycles lined up. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Mhm.
These
Yes.
beautiful Harley Davidsons, and it was like all these like badass people. And my dad, he loves motorcycles up to this day. And he's like, oh, you can pretend you're riding it. And it was such a like, oh my God, like these beautiful pieces of metal, like just sitting
Yeah.
here. I remember that being a big and then that people were friendly. Oh, take pictures with them and all these
Aw.
things, right? And so that was fun.
Oh,
That was
that's so
one. That
mhm.
was one. Another one I think was when I actually got to Louisiana. Um, and I think ignorance is a blessing sometimes, right? Because I was 17 when I left to go to Louisiana, and I really had no, I don't think I really understood what I was going into.
Mhm.
And so because now I can like thinking about it is like I'm gonna live with a family that is like complete strangers. I don't know anything about them.
Yeah.
They'll pick me up at the airport and then that's it, right? End of the
Mhm.
story.
Yeah.
But even at that point, Mama and Papa picked me up at the airport, and they picked me up and they had a beautiful sign, "Welcome home, Griselda." They had flowers, and it was about an hour drive from the airport to their home, and everybody was waiting for me, like sisters and spouses. And at that point it was three nephews, children to their daughters, and everybody was waiting for me to get there. And I I don't remember what I thought at that moment, but I'm sure it was a cultural shock because here I was, right, 17 years old,
With
and this
strangers.
family
Yeah.
is this house is full of strangers, and they were loving from day one, right, first sight. But it was loud. It was a language I didn't understand. But it was so beautiful at the same time. Like she had my room ready, um, and she walked me to it, and it was just I don't know. It's so hard to describe because it was like a loving, like welcoming that
Mhm.
it it, it was not even that of a like I want to go home, actually on the
Okay.
contrary, because she became my what I needed after losing my mother, right? And we would stay in bed just talking. She would sleep with me, I mean, in my room, and we would just talk, and we would just be talking until like whatever hours of the night. And I think I mean, it was like God sent for me. So while I understand there was a shock, I cannot understand what like the details of it.
So it was more like just like an embrace. They really embraced you. They really took you in and really made you feel welcome, which is amazing. I love that you had that experience to be able
Yes.
to, just have that embrace. I love that. What is one thing you miss about living in Mexico?
Ah, I think that the thing that I miss most about living in Mexico is my family.
Yeah.
Just well,
Oh, I'm so sorry.
so I mean, I've been there with them visiting actually during the now that we can work remotely, right? I've been there
Mm-hmm.
for like a week or so. I don't know what it is to be living with my family as an adult, like
Yeah. Yeah.
hey, what are you doing? Let's get together for carne asada on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, sure, I'll see you there. Um, I mean, I make an effort to be there for the family moments,
Yeah.
but I mean, I have a huge family, so it is hard to
Yeah.
be there for everything. So
Yeah. No, I understand. I understand
all the
completely.
birthday cakes that I haven't been part of, right? And the
It's
things that we do
mm,
as a family that when you can drive down the street and just see
mm-hmm.
them. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing with Hispanics. We have huge families and
yes,
we're very family oriented. So it's like when we do something, it's all of us. It's all of us together
yes.
and celebrating and all that. So I completely understand.
Yeah,
And
actually, when I married my husband, he's Caucasian, and he said, "Well, what about family?" And I said, "Well, yeah, let me tell you, my family expands beyond you and I to my siblings, to their spouses, to their kids, to my aunts, to my cousins." And so it was really interesting. But yeah, I think yeah. Anyway, family
yeah,
is
no.
what I miss most. Having
Yeah.
a day to day with family that I don't know what it is as an
Yeah.
adult.
I hear you. I hear you. And so once you did the back and forth of like going back to Mexico and then coming here. So once you made that decision, right, that you're going to stay here, how was that transition for you?
It was not easy in any way. It was not easy in any way because I remember before I was married, I was working at an organization and they were willing to help me go through the immigration process to become a US permanent resident. And they were willing to pay for it. That is a requirement by law, right?
Yeah.
And we started the process, which is tedious and long, and
Mm,
we waited for the different steps. And unfortunately, at some point, the the salary that it required my position, so it was going to be job based, and so the salary that this position required was like $4,000 more than what I was making. And at that point, it was like, can you increase my salary? I mean, like my livelihood is on $4,000. I'll pay for that.
mm,
And because it was part of a university and there was bureaucracy and other things, that didn't happen. And so I went back to square one. And so when I mentioned that I've been in all kinds of visas, non-visas, etc., I I I part of me feels that I was not this the system in the US is such that not even like people who come to contribute highly to society and communities are able to transition into a to actually having the freedom to contribute even more
Mhm.
to society, to the economy, to their communities, right? And so I feel that professionally, I kind of failed at being independent enough, and I'm highly independent because I had to be, right? I had to survive, I had to make it work. And so by not being able to transition through my job, which I had put so much effort
Mm.
to doing with and education and all these things, it was a lot of frustration attached to
Yeah.
that. And when I got the permanent residency through marriage, it was the easiest thing to go through. And within 3 years, I applied for my US citizenship and I got approved like within a month. And so it was really, I remember the first time I came across the border with the US permanent residence card, I literally was like hyperventilating, thinking
Mm.
that I was gonna be stopped and saying, this is
Yeah.
fake. This is
Yeah.
fake. You cannot go across. And I remember after I had become a US citizen, I had my naturalization certificate. And as a non-immigrant, even as a permanent resident, you are scrutinized every time you come across the border, especially when it's like we go across the border by land here, right?
Yeah.
It's literally across the Rio Grande. And when the first time I was coming back as a US citizen, I didn't have a passport because I needed to go before I was able to process the passport. And I remember getting there and giving them the passport and my driver's license, and I was like going into my usual long story just to find why I was coming across. And
No.
the agent at that point, she said, it's okay, you've earned it, you are good. And it was such a like PTSD kind of moment, and it's like it's all good, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So what in that moment I was grateful, but I was also frustrated that that it's so different for people who are not US citizens, people who are good and who do good and who have the need to go back and forth, and they're put to pressures that are like just unnecessary. And so it was interesting
Yeah.
to be happy for myself, but then to also realize that I had gone through a lot of things and that still I had not had it as tough as some other people.
Some other people. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And so, wrapping up, what does the American dream mean to you? And I love this asking this question because it's so uniquely for everyone and immigrants. So, I really love to hear what the American dream means to my guests.
Yeah, thank you for asking, Haiti. And by the way, thank you for your mission of love here with this podcast to change the narrative on immigrants. Because I think if we spread these stories more, the negative narratives would be less prominent, right? So thank you for allowing this space to be created. So the American dream is interesting for me because when I hear America, as a person from Mexico who learned that America was Alaska to Chile, for me it's really hard to to
Yes.
just narrow it down to the US. And so that's the first thing that I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to say this in front of the camera. But like as a dreamer coming to the US, to make my dreams come true, I believe that this is a land of opportunities, despite the things that are still present as barriers for immigrants. But it is much easier for many of us to see the fruits of our labor as a result of our hard work. And so for me, as a person in the US I have been blessed. I have had many opportunities, education, travels, now my business, now living my passion and my dream and my purpose. I don't think I think it would be more difficult if I lived back home to be able to do that. And so I think my American dream is being able to pursue in full my life purpose, and to be able to see ways, alternatives, options of what that may mean and how to make that happen. And so I'm highly privileged and blessed, and I say, if I came to the US 20 plus years ago with no education, with no experience, not knowing the system, and I was able to make it work, I'm excited for the next 20 years have to bring for me with so much clarity in what I want to accomplish here in the US and around the world, um, with the platform that the US allows me to have.
I love that. I love that. And if anyone would like to connect with you, either to work with you or just to follow your journey, how can they connect with you?
Yeah, several options. So the first one is visit my website, drgriselda.com. I'm also on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and also my YouTube channel is Dr. Griselda Martinez, Unexpectedly Successful, the show. And I have really cool, fun parts coming up soon, especially for my professional women aspiring entrepreneurs, but also for people who may be interested in being my guest at the podcast. I am always looking for purpose-driven, successful business women who want to share their raw and genuine stories. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, I will include all of your links in the show notes and in the show description. Thank you so much again for being here, for sharing your journey, and for the work that you're doing. Just thank you. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Heidy. And again, thank you for the labor of love that you do through this podcast. And let's continue to change the narrative.